I fell in love with John Feinstein's work with A Season on the Brink, which of course followed around Bob Knight in Indiana. And it was a terrible year, one in which ended up in the NIT. And it was, I think, the year before they end up, or maybe 2 years before they end up winning a national championship. And you followed up with A Season Inside. And later on, there was Next Man Up, which followed around the Baltimore Ravens. Um, and each one, there was the Army Navy one, there was Forever's Team. Like you kind of go back, and if you've ever read a sports novel, and read more than one or two, you've read a Feinstein, and you're like, that was unbelievably thorough. Couldn't put it down. Remarkably not only well written, but it was kind of well narrated in terms of how it was written. Because I always thought, like, I'm a big Tom Clancy guy, right? But Tom Clancy's novels at times became too wordy, and I don't care about the exact data behind every missile. That it's like showing off how much research he had done. But for whatever reason, I thought Feinstein did just the right amount of, I've done the right research, yet it's tangible to you. So fast forward to 2012, and I was part of the initial launch group to CBS Sports Radio. And we followed Jim Rome, I believe, right? That's how it was. Jim Rome and then us. And before Jim Rome, John Feinstein had a show. And John was let go. I still had the radio job there. And I don't want to know if we had a falling out, but they were just, John was not the easiest dude in the world. Now, when I say that, you're going to sound like that's going to sound like John was an a-hole. He wasn't. He just wasn't easy. He did not. What's the term you used, Jay Stu? Didn't suffer what?
He did not suffer fools.
No, not at all. And he held people around him to a way higher standard than most people did. And I know, and look, what happens in this business is when you're like that, you can get coined difficult. But difficult doesn't mean bad. Difficult just means difficult. And I mean, fascinating person. Somewhere along the way over the past, I've been at Fox Sports Radio for 8 years. Over the past 5 years, he and I have run into each other at various events. Back when I was at CBS, I covered the Patriot League. I saw him at one of those games. Of course, he wrote the book literally wrote the book on the Patriot League. And then in the last 8 years, we ran into each other at the Big Ten tournament, the NCAA tournament, and we had kind of, made amends, but there was like no falling out. It was, I don't even remember what it was over, but I think it was mostly over the fact that John got let go and he just lashed out at people because he was upset, which you have every right to be upset. Right? I didn't get you fired. None of that thing was me, but that's what I thought. I thought that's where his bitterness kind of came from. And Jason, I want to get to your story about him in a second, but here's what's fascinating. Obviously, our season did not go as planned in terms of wins and losses. There are tons of wins and some losses off the court and in the preparation and things that we've learned. And in terms of the story, like I still continue to contend that if you name college basketball teams that have been covered this year, there's like 5 or 6, and we're one of the 5 or 6. Right? We're one of the 5 or 6. College basketball is kind of a month-long sport, but there's like 5 or 6, and we're one of the 5 or 6. And we have a pilot, and there's another couple shows for a reality show, and we have the buyers are kind of lining up. All of the usuals want to have, them follow us around, be embedded, and we have a production group that's already done some of this work, and it's really, really good stuff. But there's a lot that happened this year, like, man, I wish there was a camera there, or man, I wish there wasn't a camera there. But it's a really fascinating story. Like if people only knew. And let me make sure I get the date right. So I texted John March 4th, and he texted me back March 5th. He said, "Are you glad your season is over?" I said, "No, we just were figuring out playing well and starting to get healthy." So we texted back and forth a little bit, and I said, what are you working on? He said, I'm doing a book on what makes great coaches great besides great players. I'm also teaching journalism at Longwood University. And I said, John, do you want your next bestseller? He said, always. I said, come follow me around for a year and write this story. And he said, I'll call you. And he did. He called me earlier this week, and I was in the middle of an exit meeting and with one of my players, and I pushed that button that says, can I call you back? Isn't that what it says? Can I call you back or whatever? And I was driving today, a long drive last 2 days, and on my list of calls was John, and I was like, I'm going to do it tomorrow, or I'm going to do it tonight. And John Feinstein passed away today. Stunning.